Episode 3: The Illusion of Freedom. Why slavery wasn't just physical. What if I told you that the worst kind of slavery isn't physical at all? What if I told you that a person can be free, but still be a slave? Because the real goal of Pharaoh was never just to control the Jews physically. His real power was in controlling their minds. This episode is about mental and spiritual exile, the kind that's happening right now to you and to the entire world. And if you don't see it, you might already be enslaved. Let's begin. In the last episode, we learned how exile starts subtly. It doesn't begin with chains. It begins with comfort, small compromises, and forgetting your mission. The Jews in Egypt didn't wake up as slaves. It happened over time. By the time they realized it, they didn't even fight back. Today, we're going deeper. What was Pharaoh's real strategy? How did he keep the Jews enslaved without walls or chains? And how is that same system still operating today? Because if you don't recognize how Pharaoh works, he'll never break free. The psychological war of Pharaoh. Most people think Pharaoh just used physical slavery. But look at what the Torah actually says. Pharaoh saw that the Jews were multiplying and growing strong. He said, "Let us act wisely." Exodus chapter 1. He made them work harder, but not just to get more labor out of them. His reason? So they won't listen to false hopes. Exodus chapter 5. Pharaoh's goal wasn't just to make them work. It was to make them so exhausted, so mentally trapped, that they wouldn't even think about freedom. He didn't need walls to keep them in. All he had to do was keep them too distracted to notice that they were slaves. The Klippa of Egypt, a system that blocks awareness. In Kabbalah, Egypt represents a Klippa, a force that blocks spiritual clarity. The Arizal explains that the exile of Egypt was not just physical. It was an exile of da'at, consciousness. Pharaoh's real power was keeping the Jews busy, so they wouldn't have time to think. If the Yetzer Hara, evil inclination, can't convince you to sin, he'll just keep you too distracted to even think about Hashem. And if that sounds familiar, that's because the system today is doing the exact same thing. How Pharaoh's strategy is used today. Ask yourself, how much time do I actually spend thinking about redemption? How often do I reflect on my purpose? Or am I always just too busy? How much of my life is actually my own decisions? And how much is just me scrolling mindlessly on TikTok and Instagram? Because this is the modern Pharaoh. Today, they don't need chains to enslave you. They just need to keep you occupied. They keep you chasing work, entertainment, social media, the news, fear, distractions. And before you know it, you don't even think about anything real anymore. And that's when they win. Modern connection. The global mind control system. The Pharaoh of today is not a person. It's a system. Governments and corporations don't need to enslave people physically. They control them mentally. The world is engineered for distraction. Every second, a new notification, a new crisis, a new thing to keep you occupied. Why? Because if people actually stopped and thought deeply about life, the system would fall apart. The Jews of Egypt worked without purpose. So do most people today. They work day and night. But for what? They're being drained of their energy and identity, so they don't even imagine freedom. Today, people work endlessly. But what are they building? Who are they serving? The media controls your thoughts the same way Pharaoh did. In Egypt, Pharaoh dictated reality. He told the Jews what they were worth, and what they should do. Today, social media does the same thing. It tells you what to be afraid of. It tells you what to chase. It tells you what's normal and what's not. And the more you accept it without questioning, the deeper you fall into exile. The entire world is in a mental Egypt. But the ones who see it are the ones who are already stepping out. Pharaoh's real slavery wasn't chains. It was mental control. Ask yourself, where am I being enslaved without realizing it? What distractions are keeping me from thinking deeply? What am I spending my time on that isn't actually important? Breaking free starts in the mind. And once you see the system, you can never unsee it. Because the first step to Geula, redemption, is realizing that you were never really free. This was episode 3. In the next episode, we're going deeper. What actually wakes people up from exile? How does redemption begin? Not just in history, but in real life. And what are the signs that it's happening right now? If you've made it this far, don't stop here. If this message resonated, share it. Because the more people wake up, the weaker Pharaoh's system becomes. See you in episode 4.